Welcome to Living Local After Dark Beltway Book Club edition. I am your host, Ellen Meny, and I'm so excited to welcome my guest to the show today. She is the author of I Hope You Find What You're Looking For. That would be Bsrat Mezghebe. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So first of all, I love the cover, as I've said before. But what is the book I Hope You Find What You're Looking For about?
It is a novel that delves into the secret lives of three Eritrean women living in the DC suburbs in 1991. It's on the eve of Eritrean independence, which was achieved after 30 years of war. The women make up a multi-generational family. So it's a lot of fun. It is a story. It's about the stories that we tell ourselves about love, motherhood, and freedom, and how we can get the courage to create our own.
I love that. And I love a multi-generational story. They're always so powerful. And it's even cooler that it's set in the DMV. What was like the kernel of an idea that led to this?
I grew up in this area. I'm a DC native, and I grew up in the 80s and 90s here in the area too, a part of a really big organized Eritrean community. There was so much drama and entertainment and love. And when I was younger, I don't think I was aware of how dramatic, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but just how dramatic the times were. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older, when you have some hindsight.
Oh, yeah, as an adult.
And you have a little bit of early onset nostalgia of the good old days, and you're exchanging notes with the people you grew up with. I realized how special, how extraordinary the times were. And also, my parents and my peers' parents, they're boomers, and we're starting to lose some of them. They're getting older. And I really, you start thinking about your life, you think about the lives of your loved ones, and I really wanted to capture the really amazing stories, and it was a real labor of love. So the kernel of the idea, it was inspired by my childhood. Even though it is fictional, the book doesn't tell anyone's true story, but it was inspired by my childhood and also about the war, inspired by the war that created this kind of mass displacement of Eritreans. Why DC? This area has such a big Eritrean community. And the characters, I'm looking forward to talking to you about this as well as a fellow writer. It's interesting why our characters choose us. I don't know why they chose us, and I don't know, I haven't dug maybe as deep as I should have into what in my subconscious brought them to me. But I don't know. It was in, there's three women, and that for whatever reason, I was kind of playing around with some things, and I felt like these were the three women whose stories I wanted to tell, but I don't know why.
Sometimes they just come to us.
They just come to you,
No, it's a beautiful thing. Why characters choose you. I'm going to be thinking about that. But talk about also writing DC, writing the DMV. What was that like to write something so close to, literally your home, but so close to home, so to speak? Yeah,
it's crazy because, on the one hand, it should be easy because they're my memories, and I should be able to very easily evoke them. But at the same time, when, intimacy and familiarity can sometimes obscure things at the same time. So it was hard and also it not just obscure things, but it's hard to capture something that so well. I feel like I don't know, it's a weird thing. Like sometimes you can be an expert about things that you don't know as well, but if I had to describe something I really know well, it'd be very hard to capture on a page. So I tried to think about how the area looked, how it smelled, the food that I was eating, the music I was listening to, and what the characters and the story, all those things that they would be doing. And it was a lot of fun. The 90s is like 30 some years ago.
Don't remind
me. Crazy to think about.
It's Do not remind me.
Crazy, I know. And DC is a different city. But it was fun. A lot of the novel is set on the mall. One of the characters, Elsa, is a hot dog cart vendor. That was a big thing back in the day. And it was fun to think about what the mall used to look differently.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though they're food trucks now, but even where their position is a little bit different. Kind of the landmarks that I mentioned, some of those things aren't there anymore. What we were wearing, what we were listening to. So it was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a stroll down memory lane, I think, for a lot of DMVers, so to speak. And I want to talk about the cover because I've been hyping it up.
Yes.
I hope you find what you're looking for. I feel like the eyes are kind of self-explanatory,
Yep.
but I mean, is that where they come from?
Yeah. So
Okay.
so that type of the way that the eyes look, it's a
Yeah.
play on two things. So
Okay.
kind of ancient Abyssinian Christian iconography. The Orthodox visual iconography, that's where the eyes came from,
Okay,
and you'll
yes.
see it in like religious illustrations and paintings. So that I was like, okay, I'm always intrigued by that. And then whenever Apple revealed the emojis, I don't know
Yeah,
what
the eye
decade that was.
the eye emojis,
So I
yeah.
kind of also wanted to make it a play on that, because that is a very pointed emoji. It can mean different things, but
I
it's
know.
pointed.
It is
It's
the eye
pointed,
emoji.
yeah. So, and I kind of presented like a very inarticulate pitch to the design team at my publishers, and they got it. They
I
were
love
like,
that.
Yeah, they got it, and it was like a very quick thing to do. I was so impressed, and I love it.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love
It captures you. It kind of, I mean,
Yeah.
the eye, you
Yeah.
lock eyes with it.
Yeah, and can I say something very nerdy?
Please.
So if you see one set of eyes is looking forward, it's like to the
Yes.
future, and one is looking straight ahead, that's the present, and one is facing to the past. I'm not sure the sequence, and one is looking back, which is to the past.
Yes, no, it's
So,
true. I'm
yeah.
looking at it right now, and that makes total sense,
Yeah.
which I love. And I love when a cover has like so much
Yeah.
detail. I
Yes,
didn't even
yes.
think about the aspect
Yeah.
of kind of the religious iconography.
Yep.
So that is really cool. Okay, well, we have to go to break right now.
Sure.
So stay tuned, everybody. But when we come back, I want to talk more about your writing process, the books you love, all of that good stuff. So everybody, thank you so much for joining me for the Beltway Book Club. We will be right back. Stay tuned for more, where we will talk more about the book. We'll see you very soon. Welcome back, everybody, to more Beltway Book Club. I am your host, Ellen Meny. So excited to talk to my guest today. She is the author of I Hope You Find What You're Looking For, Bsrat Mezghebe. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So we talked about your book. I'm so excited to read it. I want to talk about the writing of your book. When did you start writing it? I was just like, let's dive in.
Let's do it. No, I started the book in 2015.
Okay.
I started, so my earlier, before I got into writing, I studied international development. I worked in consulting, and I kind of had the, kind of classic quarter life crisis where I was like, something doesn't quite feel right, and I wanted to explore something more creative. So I took writing classes here in the DC area. Just like there's the writer studio in Bethesda.
Yes, love it.
Love that. Amazing. And I would attend tons of book talks, author talks. I was everywhere, and I met a fellow writer. I didn't consider myself a writer at the time, but
okay.
I was just really into storytelling. And from there, I kind of got hip to another workshop that was somewhere else. And, you just kind of piece something together. So I was taking workshops here and there. And then ultimately I decided to get my MFA. And I started the book in the second semester of my MFA program. That was in 2015. And I finished it in 2024.
Wow.
So it took me 9 years. If I thought it was going to take me 9 years, I don't think I would have started it. I was convinced that I was going to finish it when I graduated, which was in 2016.
Yeah.
I had a fellowship to finish the novel, to continue research, because I went back to Eritrea to do a lot of research.
Okay, wow.
So, which was amazing, because a lot of the book has to explain why the characters are in America.
Yeah.
I had to explain kind of the historical context. And I was like, okay, I'll give myself a year extension to finish the manuscript while I'm doing this fellowship. 2017 came. Was it kind of, but there was still so much work to do.
Yeah.
And I got my agent in 2018. We worked on it for another 4 years.
Wow, okay.
Just to kind of get into shape. And
Yeah.
I went back to work in that period. And we sold it in 2022. And then from 2022 to 2024, we all, my editor and I worked on it. So it's not abnormal, especially for
true.
first-time books, and you're a fellow writer as well. But the stories that we focus on the stories about writers and their accomplishments are the ones who get it done really quickly, and it's not fair.
No,
It's not fair, because that's not actually the norm. It usually takes writers quite a bit of time, and rightfully so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think people don't realize the amount of time it takes.
Yeah.
Someone might say, "Oh my gosh, well, you just published this book. You must have written it like that." But no, and I think especially for a book that covers multiple, like gets in depth with the stories of people, especially multiple places and generations, it takes that time.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's good. It's good to hear.
Yes, it does. It takes a long period of time. And
Yeah.
it's also, I think, when it's your first book, you're figuring out your brain.
Right.
You know,
right.
and people talk about, writer's block and all the other cliches about writing. But I think what helps is if you spend enough time kind of struggling on the page, it's kind of like the 10,000 hours. The more time you spend on it, when you reach a quote unquote a block, you would have worked on it. Like you would have experienced so many blocks where you have gotten on the other side.
Yes.
That it kind of creates this virtual cycle where you're no longer as intimidated because 40 pages ago, I also had a block, and I managed to sort it out.
True.
But you have to face all those blocks.
Yes.
You have to kind of face a good number of them,
right?
So that you kind of develop this muscle where you know that you can get on the. At least that was my experience. I had to kind of get stuck enough times and then overcome being stuck. So it took a long period of time. There was a point, there's a point kind of in the middle where you can't quite see the end.
Oof,
and
yes.
I remember thinking, I wonder if you can relate, why did I even start?
Right. What is this book?
What did I do? Yeah. Why did I even have, why did I want to even write this book again? What spoke to me here? But kind of sheer, pride and stubbornness. And, pride because I told people about it.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to...
Once you tell people.
Yeah, you got to do it. You don't want to seem like a quitter. And stubbornness, that habit of sitting, opening up your laptop and opening up that desktop, there is something kind of addictive.
Yes,
about
definitely.
it. I kind of got, stuck in that rhythm, which is a good thing. And, then eventually the light came back in.
Yes, absolutely.
I could see a little bit more light, and then it.
It's a really great lesson for fellow writers.
Yes.
Because, writer's block is such a common refrain. And I think working out that muscle over and over again.
You're not as afraid.
Yes.
Like this has happened before and I figured it out.
Yes. And you made it through. And here your book is.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, writers or readers, do you have any favorite books that kind of have inspired you over the years?
I am terrible with favorite questions.
I
My
know,
list
it's hard.
always changes.
It's hard.
Oh my God, top 3, top 5. Never ask me that because I'm always rotating things in and out. I will say, I'll share the first book I read that made me want to write.
Yes,
because I've always been a big reader. That was my creative outlet before
Yeah.
I even thought about writing. And I read so much without even thinking that I wanted to write. But Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Yeah.
That's the first time I read a book where I was like, maybe I can do this, because this is a story about the Biafran War in Nigeria, but it's also about a family, about 2 sisters and a family. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It's a family, but it's kind of the war and politics, So I was like, that kind of planted a little seed. I love the book Out of Egypt by Andre Asiman. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He wrote Call Me By Your Name. Into a movie. That book is more well known than Out of Egypt. It's his memoirs about his family as a Sephardic Jewish family, and they were in living in Alexandria, Egypt, and they were expelled at the end of World War II. I think, maybe a little bit later. Really beautiful story about the end of an era of a family, and I read that book almost once a year.
Wow.
And it's just a good, that to me is the best education.
Yeah.
Just learn picking sentences apart and figuring out why are these characters so memorable to me? What is he doing here? And again, I never read that way before, but reading as a writer is different from reading as a reader. So those 2 books really stuck out to me, I would say, and On Beauty by good old Zadie Smith.
Love it.
I love that
Love
novel.
it.
Yeah, I have to throw that in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you've expanded my to-be read list, so I appreciate that. We got to go to break, but when we come back, we'll talk more about books and all that good stuff. So thank you so much, and everybody stay tuned. We will be right back with more Living Local DMV After Dark, Beltway Book Club edition. We'll see you soon. Welcome back to Living Local After Dark, Beltway Book Club edition. I've been having so much fun talking about the book. I hope you find what you're looking for. Bsrat, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk about any advice you have for writers.
Yes, I have plenty of advice. I would say, so there's some folks who this might not apply to fiction writers.
Okay, fair enough.
But there are some people who want to write about things, and they're either personal. They cover kind of difficult topics, difficult themes, and they don't want to implicate people in their lives.
Fair. Okay.
So my advice, and I write fiction, but I have some nonfiction ideas. I got this great advice on my MFA program, which is if that's you, if that description applies to you, write it.
Okay.
Writing is different from publishing. Your job is to write.
Okay, yeah.
And after you write, you can decide what you want to do with it. Often that argument, but I don't want to, I don't want to expose myself or expose other people. It can come from a sincere place, but then it can also end up becoming a way to procrastinate or avoid writing. And as writers, we are always looking for reasons not to write.
It's true.
We have to do our laundry.
We got to clean the kitchen.
Clean the kitchen. We have to meal prep.
Right, exactly.
We're going to clean the kitchen, then we're going to meal prep, then we're going to clean the kitchen again.
Right.
We love it. We love to find a reason not to write. And this is a very powerful reason not to write.
Oh, no, true.
Right? So, but no, your job is to write it, and you can figure out what you want to do afterwards. I read this book. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's called The War of Art.
Yes.
Did you?
I know of it, but I haven't read it.
It changed my approach to creativity, and I really recommend it to any creatives. Doesn't have to be a language artist, visual artist, all artists. The author, I'm blanking on his name, but it's a very well-known book, describes creativity in like kind of spiritual warfare terms.
Wow, that's
which is
powerful.
That's not my frame.
Right.
That's not like my worldview. But he describes it as like as the artist, your job is to sit in front of your tools every day. Is to show up. And to show up sincerely with intention and to do your work. And the angels of creativity will reward you, but they want to see that you are serious. Ooh. And they want to see that you mean business and that you're going to sit there and do your work. They want to help you.
Yeah.
And that kind of transformed how I felt about creativity, because I struggled a lot with it's such solitary work.
It is,
writing, and
truly.
You're in your head all the time.
Yes.
You're in your head about the work. You're in your head about how you are handling the work.
Right.
And you got to just clear all that stuff out and do your job. And the forces of good will help you. So I just do your job and don't worry about anything else is what I would say.
That's advice we need.
Yeah, just do your job, and try. Like I listen to podcasts like yours. I would go to book talks. I would, I did before I got my MFA. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know writers. You think it's just you kind of spinning in your head, and it helps. You don't have to even go to a book talk. There's so many writers talking about their craft online. The more, the author who wrote The Help, I think she was rejected like The Help was the well-known.
Right.
Yeah,
a billion times. Probably, yeah.
Just learning that fact, a friend of mine who's also a writer shared it with me. That gave me juice for like a year. You know what I mean? Like just, staying up to like learning about the struggles of your fellow writers.
Yes, absolutely.
It helps to know that you're not alone, but at the end of the day, that can also be a distraction. The writing culture. So you have to do your job and show up and write.
Yes.
And that's the only way you make any progress.
Let me put this on a plaque.
Yeah, right.
And frame it.
Right. Yeah.
No, it's true. It's true. And it's great advice, and I needed to hear it too. So I'm gonna go home and write after this. But I wanted to ask, going back to the book itself, I mean, what do you hope people get out of I Hope You Find What You're Looking For?
What I love about fiction, as opposed to like other forms of I guess, storytelling or means of information sharing, it's a way to kind of bridge the specific to the universal. You could be reading about people who are very different from you, and in seconds in a scene you are locked in, and you feel very invested, and you can feel seen in a way that maybe a headline doesn't quite get you there. Yeah. And I want readers to read about, a family who they might have passed in the grocery store or on the road in this area and they wouldn't have known anything about. And I want them to feel very close to that family, which is an Eritrean family. But I would also want my readers to imagine that the things, to think about what they would do if the circumstances in their home country weren't so safe, and if they had to leave. I want them to think about immigrants who have to leave their home, And I want them to think about if they had to make a really, really hard choice, where would they go? How would they start over? Would they want to stay and fight and be heroes? Would they want to possibly be collaborators? Would they want to start over? And if they did start over, how would they kind of keep the memory of their old lives behind? I want them to really think about what it means to have to start over. Yeah.
It's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's no small thing.
No.
People don't make those decisions very lightly, and I want people to think about that in a way that my book is very dramatic, but it's also, I hope people think it's funny.
Yes.
Because that's life is really dramatic, and it's funny, and it's it's happy and sad, it's boring, and I want people to see that everyday life, no matter if the circumstances of your life kind of revolves around the same thing. It's like making the living, dealing with your family, trying to find love, it's all the same.
Absolutely.
So,
well, unfortunately, we're running out of time, so we got to go. But people can find your book wherever books are sold, right?
Everywhere.
Fantastic. And your website?
bmezghebe.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the show. It was amazing talking to you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us on the Beltway Book Club. I will see you next time. Have a great one.